She stood in front of the enraged members of the community and the chief, her heart beating fast with fear. They were so furious that she worried that they might resort to violence. And then she waited for her fate with bated breath. What would it be? What did she do to be in this situation? Some people had always been unfortunate. Some things just never work out for them. While for others, life is not a bed of roses. For Charity, they had never been roses. She could not recall the last time that something good happened to her. Charity spent years before she was able to gain admission into the university. When she eventually did, she battled with strike and all sorts of challenges that made her spend extra years. By the time she graduated from the university, her friends had gone very far in life. Some of them were married with children, while others were already excelling in their career. Charity thought that life would get better after graduating, but she had no idea that it was about to get worse for her. The first company she went for a job interview. The man interviewing her wanted her body before giving her a job that wasn't even worth much. Charity had merely wanted something to keep her going. Charity rained insults on him and stormed out of his office. But months later, she hadn't even gotten another chance at an interview. It was as though the companies she submitted her CVs to trashed them the moment she turned her back and left, because they never called her back. She never got a single feedback. Rent was almost due. Charity needed to feed and meet up her basic needs. Her parents from the village were always calling and making demands. And Charity wasn't getting any younger. Yet, nothing. Was she cursed? Even the small jobs with Miguel pays still didn't even call her for an interview. You should have allowed that man to have his way with you. It's just once, right? And then he will give you the job. A lot of people do worse just to get a job. If you really wanted the job, you would have closed your eyes and done it. And it would have been over in a bit. Charity's friend, Rosie, told her one evening. Charity's shoulders fell dejectedly. She had always believed in being upright and moral, but the words of Rosie really sank deep, especially as she hadn't gotten any call from any of the companies that she had tried applying for. In this part of the world, the patient dog never eats the fattest bone, Rosie always said. And truly, Charity had been more than patient. She had prayed, fasted for days, trusted in God, served in the church, and she had also made an attempt by going out every single day to submit her CVs. And she was sure that by now, every company in her community, big and small, now had her CV, but no one was even giving her a chance. Eventually, Charity decided to go back to that company and give in to the man's demands. Using Rosie's advice as her motivation, it was just a one-time thing, and she would get a job for as long as she could. But Charity was met with disappointment when she got there. The man told her that someone else had agreed to do what he wanted minutes after she walked out on him, and since then, the lady had been given the job. He went as far as laughing at Charity for thinking that months later, the job position would still be waiting for her. As a young woman, you must learn to make hay while the sun shines, he said mockingly before Charity left his office again for the second time. But this time around, she was leaving with more shame and disappointment. Why wasn't she just lucky enough? Charity kept hearing people talking about the good things that were happening to them. Some got jobs, found a husband, got a visa to travel abroad, started their business, or even gave birth. For everyone else, there was something to celebrate. But for Charity, there was absolutely nothing. As the years went by, things became harder for Charity. She was practically living from hand to mouth and relying on Rosie for small favors. But even as a human being, Rosie got tired at some point and decided to give Charity some distance because it was as though Charity was marked by bad luck. Then, one night, Charity stayed awake, thinking deeply. What am I going to do? She kept asking herself. While others were sleeping and snoring, Charity was pacing around in her small room, thinking deeply. Getting a job had become an impossible mission for her. It was even worse now because those companies wanted someone younger or someone with years of experience. Charity had neither of them. I need to do something about my predicament. I can't remain like this, Charity told herself. Before dawn, she realized that if getting a job was difficult, then she should consider starting a business. A lot of people were business owners anyway. Encouraged by the thoughts that she settled for, Charity went to Rosie, the only friend that she had, and pleaded with Rosie to give her a loan to start a cloth business. Charity was certain that it would be lucrative because people wore clothes every day, and then, as soon as she made sales, she would pay back the money. Rosie wasn't sure, majorly because of how things had been for Charity, but she eventually gave Charity the money. Charity was wise enough to travel far outside her community to get cheap but very beautiful dresses, and then she brought them back to sell at an affordable price that would still give her enough gain at the end of the day. She was more than ready to excel like never before. Like and subscribe to this channel for interesting and entertaining stories. The first day, Charity didn't make any sales. She sat on her business shed from morning till night, and as beautiful and affordable as her dresses were, not a single person bought one. Charity's business shed was in the busiest part of the community. Oh, she had carefully selected that space so that everyone would easily see what she was selling. And everyone who passed by showed interest by coming in to check for dresses and ask for the price, but they never bought anything. "I will come back and get some. I don't have the money with me at the moment," they told Charity. But after 4 days, none of them came back. In fact, people had stopped coming to her shed to check out what she was selling. By the end of the month, Charity was left with all the clothes she had bought for sale. Then, she thought that she would make sales if she sold the clothes at exactly the same amounts that she bought them. With this new idea, Charity went to the market, and with a loud voice, she began to announce to everyone the amount of her clothes, which was the cheapest as far as Charity was concerned. It was painful to bring down her prices because it meant that she wouldn't make any gain. But Charity was desperate, and she needed to pay back the money that she owed. That day, she sold only 3 dresses. People still wanted her to reduce her prices more. Charity was encouraged after selling 3 dresses, and so the next market, she went back there and did the same thing, telling everyone her price and urging them to come and buy from her in the best way possible. But guess what? No one bought. After 4 markets and Charity had the same outcome, she had to stop. It was obvious that she wasn't excelling in her business, and so there was no point wasting time and resources. However, Charity couldn't eat the clothes, so she had to do something about them. In the end, Charity sold them for an even lesser amount to the one person who was willing to buy them from her. Charity became more dejected. Fortunately for her, Rosie didn't press her for the money. Charity knew that if it was someone else, she probably would have been arrested for not being able to pay. Then Charity went back to thinking about the next business that she could do. People give birth every single day. Of course, they would buy things for their babies. Charity thought to herself. She went back to Rosie again because she didn't have anyone else to turn to, and Rosie was gracious enough to listen to Charity. Charity promised that this time around, the business would not fail, and she was sure of it. When she made gains, she would give Rosie back every dime that she owed, including the money she had collected to start the cloth business. Again, Rosie gave her some money. Charity went out of her community to not just get cheap baby items, but also very fashionable ones. The kind of children items that would capture the eyes of parents that they wouldn't be able to resist. When Charity came back, she didn't take a shed this time around. Charity went from one door to another, marketing her goods. Every house she knew had a baby or a little child, Charity was there, trying to convince them to buy from her. But sadly, they had almost the same excuses. They kept telling Charity that what she was selling was very beautiful and quite affordable, oh, but they had already bought from someone else before she even started selling, or that they weren't thinking of getting anything for their children at the moment. But if they wanted to, they would come to Charity. Charity refused to give up. She stopped going to people's houses and started going to hospitals instead. Then she would pay a small amount of money to gain access to the maternity ward, to advertise her goods to nursing mothers or women who just gave birth. Charity believed that way, they wouldn't tell her about already buying from someone else. But much to Charity's disappointment, not a single mother patronized her. It was either they had already bought everything they needed for their babies months before the baby was born, or they didn't have the money to get new ones, no matter how cheaply Charity sold them. Again, Charity was left with items that she didn't have need of. She had to sell them off cheaper to someone outside the community because she definitely couldn't keep them with her. And then she went back to thinking. Charity refused to be discouraged completely because she really needed money to meet up with her responsibilities. This time around, Charity decided to sell groceries. People might not want to buy clothes or baby items, but Charity had no doubt that no matter how broke they claimed to be, they would definitely buy groceries, especially for their children. So, instead of giving Rosie the money from the baby items she sold, which wasn't even the complete money that Charity borrowed initially, she used it to buy some groceries. Charity started going from one house to another again, very early in the morning and in the evening time, trying to make sales. But as though bad luck decided to cling to Charity, she found it difficult to make sales. Parents were willing to buy, or so they said, but they mostly preferred other brands. None of them seemed to like the brand that Charity was selling. Charity would have gone to get the ones they claimed to want, but she didn't have the money. And soon enough, most of them began to expire in her hands, making Charity run at a greater loss. After one full month of not making sales, Charity locked herself in her room and cried bitterly, wondering what she had done to deserve what she was going through. Like and subscribe to this channel for more stories. After crying and soaking her pillows with tears, Charity went back to Rosie. But this time around, it wasn't to ask her for another loan. Charity wasn't even sure that Rosie would be gracious enough to give her money again after two woeful failed attempts. Aside from that, Charity was tired of trying. When she got to Rosie's house, Charity fell on her knees and cried to Rosie again. "How are you doing it, Rosie? How have you become this successful?" Charity asked Rosie. Maybe there was something that she wasn't doing right, and she wanted to excel like everyone else. Rosie sold tomatoes in the community, and Charity couldn't deny how successful Rosie was. A lot of people bought from her, and Rosie was living a very comfortable life. Charity wanted to be successful at all costs. For years, especially after graduation, Charity had starved and suffered. Her family couldn't depend on her any longer because she didn't have money to give them. No one was coming close to Charity, and she really wanted that to change. She was ready to do just about anything. Rosie was reluctant at first. She lied to Charity that it was just hard work, but Charity refused to be fooled. She had been blind and ignorant long enough. Charity persisted. She told Rosie that she wasn't going to leave until Rosie told her exactly how she managed to excel in selling common fresh tomatoes. It was even more surprising that, unlike the other women, Rosie didn't take her tomatoes to the market. She simply sold them in the comfort of her house, and people still came around just to buy from her. Whatever it was that she was doing, Charity wanted it as well. Eventually, Rosie opened up to Charity. There was this native doctor at the outskirts of their community that not many people knew about. She was a witch doctor who made people successful. Charity immediately said that she wasn't interested in going to see any witch doctor. She had heard stories of people having to shed blood or do abominable things just to get wealth. And no matter how desperate Charity was, she just couldn't do it. "I'm a Christian, Rosie, and I cannot put my hands into something with deadly repercussions," Charity told Rosie firmly. A lot of people had run mad or even died after they couldn't keep up with the sacrifices, and most times, these witch doctors always demanded for almost the impossible. Charity was broke and frustrated, but she wouldn't do something that would make her evil or even take her life in a few years. Rosie smiled and explained to Charity that this native doctor, who was also a witch doctor, didn't operate like that. She would never ask anyone who went to her to take another human life, which was exactly why she was unknown to many. Rosie told Charity that she only gave instructions, and as long as you stuck to them, you could excel. Rosie tried to convince Charity, but Charity insisted that it was against her faith. Charity was also scared that Rosie might be trying to paint it to her, but she was old enough to know how most of these things worked. She had heard stories and even watched them in movies, and they never ended well. Even if she followed Rosie to the witch doctor, and she decided that she didn't want anything to do with it, if she gave Charity an instruction that she couldn't follow, Charity knew that she wouldn't be allowed to live in one piece. It was an abomination to leave their shrine or spiritual houses and not be a part of what they were doing. And in order to ensure that she would never expose them, they might end up killing you or making you go mad. Charity didn't want that. She left Rosie and went back to her small room. But days later, Charity was almost dying of starvation. Things were going worse and worse, and her family were breathing down her neck all over again. Left with no other choice, Charity went back to Rosie. Even though she had vehemently said that she wouldn't do something like that, frustration and her horrible situation made her choose to believe Rosie. "I knew you would be back," Rosie told Charity when she saw her. Then, Rosie took Charity to her witch doctor in the outskirts of the community. When they got there, Charity explained her plight to her, and she also told her that she had no intentions of shedding any blood or hurting anyone. The witch doctor laughed. She told Charity that she didn't operate like that, just as Rosie had said. However, her instructions were simple. The people who came to her always did the dirty businesses that most people wouldn't venture into, which was exactly why, even as a graduate, Rosie was selling common tomatoes. As for Charity, The witch doctor told her that she would have to start selling Akara. It was the only way, but it wasn't all. She gave Charity some charms to bury on the same spot that she would be frying the Akara, just to fortify it, and she must sell it in front of her house, just like Rosie was doing. Also, Rosie must only use bad and decayed beans, the ones that had gone so bad that no one could withstand the smell, which meant that she would have to be grinding the decayed beans herself. Lastly, no one must see her grinding the decayed beans, otherwise, the charm would lose its potency. Charity was relieved because she didn't have to do anything worth taking any human life. And so, as soon as she left the witch doctor's shrine, Charity got to work. First, she buried the charm right in front of her house, where she would set her fire to fry the akara. Secondly, she had to get herself a grinding machine before searching for beans that were decayed and smelling. Subscribe to this channel to get more interesting and entertaining stories. As early as 4 a.m., Charity got up to grind the beans so that no one would know. She almost died of the bad smell that emanated from the beans, to the point that Charity had to vomit. Because she stayed in a neighborhood and had neighbors, Charity had to be extremely careful so that no one would see her or hear the smell of the beans. So she would lock up her windows and doors, just so that she would be able to grind the beans. Then, at 6 a.m., Charity brought out the blended beans, which had stopped smelling now. She lit her fire on the buried jam and began to fry the akara. Before Charity finished frying the first round, people were already lined up, wanting to buy some of her akara, and they bought every single akara she fried that morning. There were so many people that it couldn't get to a lot of them. Then, they pleaded with Charity to not just increase the quantity of blended beans that she fried, but also fry some in the evening, so that those who couldn't buy in the morning would buy in the evening. Charity accepted without delay. In the evening, almost everyone in the community was lined up in front of Charity's house, struggling to buy from her. Some even began to fight themselves, while some others lobbied to get to the front so that it would get to them. Charity was in awe. Hmm? She was the same person who couldn't get anyone to buy something from her. But here she was, almost crushed down by desperate people wanting to get a taste of her akara. Charity increased the prices, but it didn't deter anyone. Instead, it made them come even more. People from outside the community started coming all the way to Charity's house to buy akara. They couldn't explain it, but there was something about Charity's akara that kept them coming back for more. That week alone, when Charity calculated her gain, she counted more than 3 million naira. She couldn't believe it. Who would have thought that selling akara could give anyone millions? More so, Charity had never seen this kind of money in her entire existence. She had stopped vomiting because of the bad smell, and she was now used to it. By the second week, Charity was counting millions as gain. But no matter what, she couldn't leave her small room because of the buried charm, according to the witch doctor. Once removed from the ground, it would lose its potency. Charity's rapid success sparked outrage among the other Akara sellers because Charity had stolen all their customers. Both morning and evening Akara sellers had stopped getting anyone to buy from them. They all now went to Charity. Embittered, they reported Charity to the community chief. If Charity continued like this, they wouldn't be able to cater for their families, and so they wanted the community chief to stop Charity from selling Akara. But Charity went behind the angry women and bribed the chief with money that he had never seen before. He took it without hesitation and turned his back against the Akara selling women. When they found out that their only hope was lost, they all went home in despair. Then they began to think of something else they could do. Some ventured into other businesses, while the others went back to their farms. But there was this particular woman who didn't. She was Mama D. Mama D's only source of livelihood was the Akara she was selling. She had been a widow for years, and that was the only business that she had been using to take care of her children. But now, Charity had stripped her of her livelihood. Unlike the other women, Mama D refused to forgive Charity or move on to something else. She's definitely doing something because this is not ordinary, Mama D thought to herself. She spoke to people about Charity, trying to recruit people against her, but no one paid attention to her. They were all obsessed with Charity's akara and didn't want her to stop frying them. Then she tried to confront Charity, but that didn't work. When Mama D resorted to pleading with Charity to tell her how she was going about it, Charity refused, but Mama D didn't give up. she was still sure that Charity wasn't frying her Akara with ordinary resources. One night, Mama D decided to camp close to Charity's room because she wanted to see what she was doing. Then, she used a sharp object and poked a hole in Charity's window to watch what Charity was doing. And that was when she saw Charity grinding decayed beans. Mama D almost passed out from the stench. Now she knew what Charity was doing. She wasn't wrong after all. Mama D hurried away and began to spread the news immediately, but still, no one wanted to believe her. As for Charity, she had no idea that someone had seen her, which was against the instructions she was given. And so, as she took out her blended beans to fry for the crowd waiting, the stench evaporated into the air. Everyone was shocked. Those who had heard what Mama D said believed now what she had said. The same crowd who had gathered to buy Akara surrounded Charity, forcing her to confess. Left with no choice, Charity had to confess, and she even told them about the buried charms. Enraged, they took her to the community chief, demanding for justice. Charity feared that they might kill her in anger, and she pleaded for mercy, explaining that she had done what she did out of frustration. Eventually, the community chief passed his judgment. Charity was banished from the community and never to return. Right there and then, the crowd chased Charity out of the community without even letting her take anything along with her, including all the money that she had made. Like, subscribe to this channel for more interesting and entertaining stories like this.